Okay, I want to talk about 9.4 and 9.5 review from yesterday. So that way it helps you with your quiz tomorrow. So anything that we're given, we always want to make sure it's in standard form, and it's in standard form when it's equal to 1. So we have to divide by 400. And dividing everything on both sides by 400 is going to give me a fraction on the x squared and on the y squared. And 400 divided by 400 would give us our 1. So I have 25 over 400. So a trick that would help me if I were doing this is if I had that reversed. If it was 400 over 25, I could type that in my calculator and it would give me 16. So what it really stands for would be 16 over 1. But it's a reverse of that. It's 25 over 400. So that means the 16 would be down here and the 1 would be up top. So that way I know that this is 1x squared over 16. And you can do the same thing over here. Instead of doing 16 divided by 400, do 400 divided by 16 and it's 25. Okay, so you know that's 1 over 25 instead of 25 over 1. Okay, now that it's in standard form, we want to go look at our chart. This is an ellipse because there's a plus sign in the middle of the x squared and the y squared. So a couple things that we want to point out is we want to know what is our A and what is our B, because it looks like either the A could come first or the B could come first, depending on which equation that you're in. So how do I know the difference between A and B? Well, A is always going to be greater than B. So the A is the bigger out of these numbers. So this right here stands for our A squared. It's the bigger number. It's underneath the Y squared. So I'm in this vertical ellipse row. So if A squared is 25, that means A must be 5. And if 25 is the A squared, that means 16 is our B squared, which would make B 4. Okay, so that helps me figure out my vertices and my covertices. Our vertices, we want to look at our column of vertices, and again, we're in the vertical, so it's 0, comma, plus minus A. So 0, positive 5, and 0, negative 5, and I can go and plot those points. 0 on the X, so I don't move left or right any, but I do go up 5 to positive, and I do go down 5 to negative. 4, 5. So make sure you're plotting those points correctly. This is 0 on the X and 5 on the Y, X, comma, Y. Co-vertices for a vertical ellipse are at positive and negative B, comma, 0. So positive and negative 4, comma, 0 on the graph would be over 4 units, but up none, and left 4 units, but up none. So if I connected these dots, I would see that it's a vertical looking ellipse. And I need my foci. So to find the foci, what we want to do is use this equation. C squared, which I don't know, equals A squared minus B squared. Remember that A squared was the 25 and the B squared was the 16. So 25 take away 16 would be 9. And then you square root it, meaning that C is 3. Okay, so the foci are positive and negative 3, but where is that as far as a coordinate point? Remember, the foci always lie on our major axis. They're going to be on the same axis as the vertices, so they're going to be vertical also. So up 3 and down 3. Not left and right 3. So those points are 0, comma, plus minus 3. Okay, and another ellipse question might say write the equation. if its center is at 0, 0, given these characteristics. So the vertex is at 0, comma, -8, and the focus is at 0, comma, 5. All right, so given that information, especially let's look at the vertex. If 0 comes first and then a number, I know I'm in a vertical ellipse. 0 and then a number. So it's going to look like the x squared plus the y squared equals 1, but b squared comes first and a squared comes second. Okay, so we need to know those values. Well, our vertex tells us one of them. Since our vertex is at 0, comma, plus minus a, that means that -8 is our minus a. Right? So 0, comma, -8 is 0, comma, a. A is positive and -8. So I can plug that in right here. It would look like y squared divided by a squared. So let's square our 8 to give us 64. Now we just need our b. Our focus kind of helps us with our b, but it's not 5. Okay, our focus isn't represented by b. That would be our covertice. So we need to do a little bit of work here. Using our equation for foci, c squared equals a squared minus b squared. Again, we don't know our b squared or our b, but we do know our c squared. So our focus was at 0, comma, c. Our focus is represented by c. So if 5 is our c, then c squared would be 25. And a squared, if a was 8, our a squared is 64. So then we have to solve this equation for b squared. I'm going to subtract 64 from 25, which would give me -39. I'm going to divide by this -1 in front of the b squared to give us 39 equals b squared. And that's all we really need. Underneath our x squared, it says, what is b squared? Well, b squared is 39. And that would be our equation. Okay, so same thing here on this one that says graph. We need to make sure that it's in standard form. So we want to divide by 36. And divide everything on both sides by 36. So that would give us 4 over 36. And if you think about it flipped upside down, 36 divided by 4 is 9. So flip that back upside down and you get 1/9. And then over here, 36 divided by 9 would have been 4. So we want to flip 4 over 1 to 1 over 4. And 36 over 36 is 1. So that should tell us that this is a hyperbola. So now we're on a new chart, and hyperbola has a subtraction sign in between. And there are two different types of equations, if it's x squared minus y squared, or if it's y squared minus x squared. So our particular equation is a horizontal hyperbola. In this equation, we can find the vertices at positive and negative a, comma 0. So we need to know what a is. Notice that the a is going to be underneath the x squared in this equation, and it's represented by a squared. So 9 is a squared, meaning that a would be 3 if I square rooted 9. So our vertices are at positive and negative 3, comma 0. So that's 3 on the x, 0 on the y. I'm not moving up or down any. And again, make sure you're plotting those points correctly. Asymptotes is another thing that we want to know. It's an equation. Okay, so y equals positive b over ax and negative b over ax. B over a is the slope of this line. So what is b? Where can I find it? Well, b squared is underneath the y squared. So 4 represents b squared, meaning that b would be 2. So that's my numerator. And again, a, like we talked about, was 3. So this should be a dotted line, and I want to see it on your graph. This dotted line starts at the center, 0, 0, and has a slope of 2/3. So if you went up 2 and right 3, or if you went down 2 and left 3, that's one asymptote. And your hyperbolas are never going to touch this line. But there's two asymptotes because there's a negative version of that line. This is a positive slope because it's uphill, but we want the downhill slope. So we have to go down 2 and right 3, or reverse that, up 2 and left 3. So there's our other asymptote that our hyperbola is never going to touch. Those are important. Please draw that with a dotted line. And lastly, it wants to know the foci. So foci has a new equation. It looks similar, but it's c squared equals a squared plus b squared. We don't know what c is, but we know a squared was 9, and we know b squared was 4. Add those together, you get 13. Square root that, and c is about 3.6. So let's put that in an ordered pair. Is that positive and negative 3.60, or is it 0 then 3.6? Well, just remember that your hyperbola is opening horizontally. It's never going to touch these red lines unless you draw it like I do and it accidentally hits. And our focus is going to be inside these blue curves. So we need to go 3.6 units on the horizontal axis and negative 3.6 units on the horizontal axis and up 0 units. And that's how we label the foci. Okay, we can't just put 3.6. It's an ordered pair. And the last one, write an equation of the hyperbola with these characteristics. A vertex at 0, -1, and a focus at 0, 3. So again, we have two options for equations. The vertex tells us a lot about our line, or sorry, our hyperbola. So 0, -1. Underneath the vertices column, the 0, a number means it's a vertical hyperbola. So this -1 represents our 0, -a. So we know that a is 1, and our focus is going to help us find the b. So again, we're in a vertical equation, so we want y squared over a squared minus x squared over b squared equals 1. Well, we know what's going to go underneath the y squared. If a squared, if we square the a on the 1, that would give us y squared over 1, because 1 squared is 1. And what's going to help us find our b squared is the focus. Again, our focus tells us what our c value was, and that c comes into play in this equation. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. If I squared 3, I'd get 9. The a, remember, was 1. If I squared 1, I get 1. But I don't know what b is, so let's subtract 1. And I get b squared equals 8. That's what I need. I need to know what b squared is to put it underneath the x squared. So this is the equation of this hyperbola.